What's up, everybody? You know who it is. It is Corey Riley, aka Siley Games, for just another horror movie podcast. The first official movie podcast on this channel, and many, many more. I am joined by today Captain Britannia himself, the Marvel loving, Twitch streaming, Odds Odd.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
You like that?
Yeah.
I am
I was trying
also
to-
joined. I'm sorry, I only gave the super cool intro thoughts to Mr. Odds Out here, but I'm also joined by the movie fanatic himself, Johnathan Ross.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. And of course, you guys have seen him before. He's been on my first official podcast of any type right here on Siley Games. It is Benny Frozen Fire Radford.
What's good, you guys?
How's it going, everybody? I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I want to give a good shout out to the people watching live in the chat. We've got Bear Camper, we've got Thomas, we've got Digi, the usual suspects on Siley Games. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I am so very excited to bring to you The Shining. Now, I want to give you some basic info. The Shining has a runtime of 2 hours and 26 minutes, released on May 23rd, 1980. So it is now 41 years old. Crazy to think about that. Directed, of course, by Stanley Kubrick. Screenplay by Stanley Kubrick and Diane Johnson, based on Stephen King's The Shining novel. And we'll talk about the relations between Stanley Kubrick and Stephen King as we go forward. Starring Jack Nicholson, Shelly Duvall, and Danny Lloyd, as well as Scatman Crothers, if I'm saying that right. The music was done by Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkind. Cinematography by John Alcott, who worked with Kubrick on many films before. 2001: A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon. And it, of course, was distributed by Warner Brothers. And I will tell you guys, I'm going to go ahead. I got some fun facts here. One of which is really funny to me is that if you guys have seen the movie, you know that Jack Nicholson has this incredible performance, and you see his slow descent into madness as we go through. And something funny that I read, I don't know if this is necessarily true. I have not fact-checked a bunch of these, so we're just rolling with it. But supposedly that Jack Nicholson absolutely hates cheese sandwiches. And apparently for 2 weeks leading up to the production of The Shining, he ate literally nothing but cheese sandwiches. So he did this in order to kind of like get this into character where he was just absolutely hating life, just disliking everything. And I think you can see the fact that he's not happy in those long 1,000-yard stares that he has in the movie. It's pretty cool. You seemed like that was a definite surprise for you, Johnathan. I figured you might know that one.
No, I didn't know that he only ate cheese sandwiches.
Yeah, so couple cool things there. Another fun fact, I do want to go off and kick off with some of these first, is that Danny Lloyd, the child star who plays, of course, Danny in this movie, didn't know that he was shooting a horror movie. The entire time that he was in this movie, he had no clue that he was shooting a horror movie. They told him that this was going to be a drama, and he actually didn't get to see the film until he was 16. He was 5 years old at the time that he made the movie. So I think that's really, really cool. And when he actually saw the movie, he said he didn't find it scary because he saw everything being made behind scenes. So it was something that he didn't really find too scary. And I've got one more fun fact. We'll hit some fun facts. And if you guys have any, I'll let you hit it too. But another one is that the famous "Here's Johnny" line was actually improv. Jack Nicholson took it from what was it, the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, where he I forget, I don't know if Ed McMahon introduces Johnny Carson saying "Here's Johnny," and then for some reason Jack Nicholson felt the need to do that, and I'll tell you what, man, it worked. Like, for no reason whatsoever, it definitely works because that's one of the most iconic scenes in the whole movie, in my personal opinion. Johnathan, do you have any fun facts about the movie that you know personally?
Some fun facts I know about the movie. Well, first and foremost, to that moment specific, and a little bit less about the moment, but Johnny or Jack is often a nickname for somebody who has the name John or Jonathan. So that his name is Jack. The Johnny line kind of works out canonically as well. I probably mispronounced the hell out of that.
Doesn't matter. We're rolling with it.
But let's see. Shelley Duvall and Stanley Kubrick did nothing but fight the entire time that they made that movie. He's largely the reason that we don't see her.
Shelley Duvall being Wendy, of course.
Yeah. So pretty big reason we don't see her anymore is a lot of the kind of aftermath of The Shining. What are some other stuff? Some fun facts. Let's see. The room in the Shining movie, 237, is not what it was in the book. It was 217. And yeah, I don't want to throw out too many facts, but
to piggyback off of that one, the reason why that change happened is because the owners of the, I believe it's the Stanley Hotel is where it's actually filmed and based off of, is they didn't want people to not want that room to stay in. And what's funny about that is that when they changed it, 217, because they changed it to 237 is because at the actual Stanley Hotel, there is no room 237. It does not exist. Funny enough, as you said in the book, it's called 217, right? Funny enough, that room is the most requested stayed room in the entire hotel, and it has been that way since the movie came out. So they could have just kept it, and they could have rolled with it, but they didn't, and that's kind of how it went. I want to go ahead and we'll sprinkle some little fun facts as we get through and start talking about things that are related to whatever we're talking about. But want to go ahead and get some basic like first impressions, because I know myself and Odds here saw this movie for the first time this week. Neither of us have ever seen this movie before. And I've seen it twice since I decided that we were going to do this podcast. The first time, I spent the entire movie kind of just, what is going on? Because it's like, and that was my general impression for most of it. And I was, of course, along for the ride. And I'll tell you the exact moment when we get to it where I was just completely invested. But I really loved it. I personally loved the movie. I thought it was much more enjoyable the second time I watched it, though, because I kind of had this idea of where it was going, and I was able to see things I definitely didn't see before, kind of understand the ideas and direction that Kubrick was taking this movie, because obviously there is some differences from the novel, which I have not read. Johnathan has read about 3/4 of it, you said?
Yeah.
And we'll get to that. Benny, actually, hold on. So, I really loved it, and I thought it was a fantastic movie. And as much as I was a little bit confused watching it the first time, the second time definitely cleared up a lot of things for me. And either way, whether or not I think if anybody dislikes this movie, I think it's almost unarguably a well-made movie. Like, everything about this movie is just so well done. And we'll get into really specific details. I just want to keep it broad for right now, but I liked it a lot. And I want to go ahead and kick it to Odds Odd, because this man is not a huge horror movie fan. He's never seen this movie either, so I want just your broad first impressions of it, okay? Go for it.
Right, well, first time I watched it, I think I was very much in the same boat as you. I had absolutely no idea what was going on. Sort of understood what was going on, but not why or how, right? And so I actually watched it for the second time with subtitles on this time. And I finished doing that like an hour ago. So I definitely picked up a lot more the second time, and I think that is just me with like every movie that exists ever. Is sort of, I feel like it's the same with a lot of people actually, is they'll sort of pick up a lot more things with the second time they watch it.
Overall impression.
Overall impression, I wouldn't call it a horror movie, more a thriller.
Yes,
it didn't really
and that's
scare
true.
me that much.
That is very true. And that is a caveat I'd like to say. This is just another horror movie podcast. It's kind of a broad umbrella for what we're talking about this month, because while there is horror movies, this is technically more so a thriller. It's not like super jump scary. There's definitely some like unsettling things in this movie that make you uncomfortable. But I wouldn't say it's like the normal generic idea of what a horror movie is, but it's where we're putting it today. So, but yeah, so like, I mean, what did you personally think of the movie? Like, compared to other movies that you've seen, like, how do you feel about it?
other movies just in general, or
In
other
general,
movies?
yeah, just movies in
Um,
general.
well, I mean, you've gotten me to watch a movie here that I wouldn't have watched like by choice otherwise, right? Like, obviously, I do agree that it's a very good movie. It's been very well made, but it's definitely not a movie that I would choose to watch, right?
Mm.
Um, so it's definitely not, like on my list of like favorite movies of all time.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think obviously, like you said before, it is a well-made movie. Despite regardless of what you have to say about it, especially for its time as well, because obviously it was made so long ago now. The production value on it just seems, like it's almost hard to believe that it was made so long ago. Honestly,
It's nuts. It's nuts. But overall,
yeah,
you're not like super super hot on it because it's not your necessarily type of movie. Am I wrong in saying that?
yeah, no, exactly.
Okay.
Like,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So Jonathan, I'm gonna save you for last because I know you got a lot to bring to the table. I want to go ahead and talk to Benny, who I know personally loves this movie, but I want him to tell us just your basic opinions besides that.
Yeah. Well, as you know, like as you just said, I have really loved this movie ever since I first was able to watch it. Like, oh my gosh, I've seen this like 20 billion times now, but I got to rewatch it again like today. So with rewatching it, I noticed little things that I didn't even know that I didn't notice before, which I'll get into a little bit later on, of course, because we won't get into details right now. But overall, really do love the movie. Like Oz was saying, it is definitely a more of a thriller movie than a horror movie,
For sure.
in
For
my
sure.
opinion. But like, of course, I can still see how the horror aspect is still like implemented into this movie and everything. So it really is, I think it's just really, really cool, and especially like with the soundtrack and everything that builds it up and everything, it's just
Yeah,
makes
and
it
we'll
like
get to
overall
that
amazing
because,
movie. So
wow,
yeah,
the score, the score. All right, so yeah, go ahead, Jonathan. Tell us what you thought.
You ever feel like you're gonna be that guy? Because that's kind of what I feel like right now. But no, I love The Shining. And I'll be honest, the first time I watched it, I didn't love it. Much like Odds, I was kind of like, okay. And I wasn't necessarily scared by anything, nor am I now. But I just thought there was a point in my life when I thought that a horror movie's only thing it had to do was to scare you, and if it didn't
Mm-hmm.
scare you, whereas I think horror is more relative now. But if it didn't scare me then it wasn't a good horror movie. Now I look at it and I realize some of the stakes that there are, and I consider those things a little bit more, perhaps now that I'm more grown up. And I very much think it's a horror movie in the same way that a movie like Hereditary is a horror movie.
Mm.
Because it's based more around the stakes, the danger of what there is to lose. And if you take anything out of that movie and plant it into your real life, ask yourself how it's going to make you feel. It's going to be terrifying. So, is it
Yeah.
a horror movie now, or is it still just something that is kind of airs more on the drama side? And that there's an argument to be made for that as well, certainly. But I think it is a horror. I think that horror is a little bit more of a spectrum than maybe I thought. When I was younger, but I also 100% get and could easily make a counter argument against myself as to why it's not a horror movie.
I fully agree, and I think that's a great point, saying that if you took these circumstances that are happening to these characters in this movie and applied them to your life, I think we could probably all very safely say that this could be definitely a horror movie. Because man, dude, like the fact that there's so many things going on between the character that is the Overlook Hotel itself, between what's happening to Danny, his shine. The descent that Jack Nicholson's character Jack Torrance is funny that Jack and Danny both are named after the first names of the actors. But anyway, I think it's definitely could. I think it's not just a horror movie, but also a thriller. But I think it definitely falls under those umbrellas because, like you said, take it, apply it to your life. That shit's scary. So,
Yeah.
like, I mean, if you're walking down the hallway and you start to see blood coming out of this elevator as you're walking up, I'll tell you what, you're gonna be scared. So
Yeah.
it's a very good point, Jonathan. It's a very good point. So yeah, I mean, we all we all definitely appreciate this movie, whether or not we're super into it is another thing. But I do want to start talking about like more specific details because Man, this movie has a lot going on. This is definitely like a cinema. I would say it's a cinematic masterpiece for a number of reasons. Besides, like I said, whether or not you think it's like your thing, or whether you love this movie or like it or dislike it, it's definitely a cinematic masterpiece, because there's so many like artful things going on throughout this movie that carry it through and showcase all these wonderful things that these creators, these artists are doing to bring to the movie. And I want to talk about the score first off. Like I said, it was the music was by Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkind, or Elkind, whatever, however you want to say it. I apologize. I'm sure you're going to be watching this podcast later, but I think this score does so much for this movie. The entire time, and I was actually taking notes on my phone as I watched it the first time, and then I also watched it the second time with some notes. And something that the score does, I think, where did I write it down? I've never been so scared of Tuesday before. If you understand what I mean, the way that the chapters of the movie are kind of like the scenes are paced. There is it starts. I think it starts in, where was it? Like September 30th is the first time you see everything going on in the movie, and then Jack gets the job, and then as the caretaker of the Overlook Hotel, and it then cuts to a month later, which would be October 30th or October 31st. And then from there on out, we start getting days. Like we get Tuesday, we get Wednesday, Monday, Thursday, whatever, and then time as it goes on. But the way that the score is pacing this movie, and then it's like tension, 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 and then it's like Tuesday. And I swear to God, dude, it made me like, oh Jesus, dude. Like it didn't like scare me, but it like made me jump a little bit just because of the way that the music is set. And Johnathan, I want to throw it to you. What's your opinion on the score? Because I think it's fantastic.
Dun 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 dun. Yeah, no, I mean they created, and you see this a lot in like the 70s and 80s. They created one of the greatest kind of like tentpole theme songs for a movie that there ever was, and a lot of times they had those same thing. They kind of centered around horror movies in that period, but the significance of that score is, I'm so glad it wasn't lost on you guys as newer viewers, because I first showed the movie to my girlfriend a little over a year ago now, kind of in that like, man, I hope she likes this. It's an older movie, and I'm worried that, you know, a lot of people just don't like the pacing of older movies, and so this one especially is very deliberately paced.
It is a bit of a slow burn, but it still works.
Yeah, no, and I think it works kind of not kind of because of that rather than in spite of. And like halfway through the movie, there was this moment, I don't remember the exact moment, but I think he was maybe rolling down the hallway on his trike, and she was like, "Can you pause this a second?" It's like, yeah. She's like, "This movie is changing the way that I look at movies." And in that moment, I was like, oh my God, showing her this movie was like an accidental, brilliant decision. And then she expressed that it was largely because of how the music carried the scenes, and how it built tension, and it knew when to give up and when to throw it on, and it did it so well. And as someone who, and I'm speaking for her, but not for her, but as someone who really, she wasn't a big horror movie fan, and one of the other movies we watched, and I took her to on a date. It's a weird choice for a date movie, but it was Midsummer, another almost 3-hour long quote unquote horror movie that you could argue is not a horror movie. And she loved that, and so I kind of like found her niche there. But that's another movie where it's deliberately paced, it's score driven, and no, I think that bringing up the score is a great choice, because so much of that movie hinges on having that score. I would almost love to see a version where they take the score out altogether, and it's just completely silent, and to see how you react then. It's either going to be 10 times scarier, or you're going to be like, oh, this is nothing.
That's
But
such an interesting idea, because I think personally, I think that the score is really honestly what makes this movie arguably scary. And it's, I say scary, but I sort of mean more suspenseful, because like to my point earlier, I've never been scared of Tuesday, is just that is a perfect example that it takes these things that you're just going through time, but it's creating this suspense where like the music's building and building and building and building, and then it literally just smacks you in the face with a scene change, and the music changes. And it's like whoa. I almost got like, it's like getting whiplash as you're going through this,
yeah,
but it's so well done. And
it's definitely more of
obviously,
a Monday moment.
say again.
I would say it's definitely more of a Monday moment than a Tuesday moment.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. Um, but guys, feel free to chime in. You guys don't have to, like, we don't have to take turns anymore. We're just gonna free flow discussion as we go through this. But I
Well,
can give it to you if you want me to. But
with sort of what you guys are talking about with the whole score thing and being scared of the Tuesday, obviously, I definitely agree that it sort of it built it up and then it sort of just scene change, right? Nothing really happened.
mm-hmm.
Um, and it sounds to me how you guys are describing it. You guys are describing it as sort of like an incredible choice, right? And I'm sure if I sort of if I understood what was going on, I'm sure I probably would too. But it's when I sort of watched it, even the second time I watched it, I was just confused because I was like, because especially the second time I watched it, I knew what was going to happen. It was just going to be a scene change, and so I was like, why is the music building up so much? It just felt so random and weird. But because I used to study music technology as well, so this is something that I would have to look into and sort of try my best to understand. But clearly I didn't do, clearly my teachers didn't do enough well. But yeah, no, I don't know.
And real quick, I want to bring the score discussion to a full stop real quick. And I this is something that I should have done. I do want to get a little bit of background from each of you guys, just like Odd said. With his background in like music technology, I want to personally say that I have always loved movies. But in my adult life, I have broadened my horizons on movies, because in the household that I grew up, and it's funny nowadays, but we watched The Matrix, Pirates of the Caribbean. We were watching. There's so many movies like that, like these franchises, and these like my dad was a huge Steven Seagal fan, Sylvester Stallone, and these were the movies that I grew up on, and I was always big into like cartoons and anime as I grew up, and that was kind of like how I started getting into entertainment. These days, again, in my adult life, I have come into acting, me personally, as well as loving acting performances in movies and TV shows and voice acting in anime. And that's what I'm most passionate about, is the acting perspective. But something that Johnathan said about his girlfriend saying that this movie kind of changes the way that you looked at movies, I fully agree with that, because I found myself, even the first time I was watching this, I found myself looking at the movie and just noticing these things, like, that's such an interesting choice to make that shot. And we'll get to cinematography, just kind of pan and follow them the entire time. And I was very aware of it. And I was like, I don't know why it's interesting, but everything about this is just interesting choices. And it's hard to explain. Maybe Johnathan, as we get to cinematography later, we can talk about that more. But for me, it's acting and just movies and entertainment in general, as well as Twitch streaming now has become a huge part of my life. But acting and voice acting is definitely my like niche, and that's what I love about watching movies and everything. Odds, can you go a little bit deeper into like your music technology background, your music background?
Yeah, well, so if you don't know me, I now study software engineering, so I've sort of gone away from that now. But obviously music technology, it was all about studio recording. So like if a band came in, we would have to set up microphones. You'd have to compose, and my favorite, which relates to all of this, right, is I think it was a unit called composition for the visual arts or something, which is literally, hey, they would give us a scene from a movie, they would strip the audio, and they would say, try your best to see if you can make some sort of musical composition that sort of follows the scene as it goes through.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And so, for example, with the Tuesday thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, obviously I can't remember the names, but the kid and the mother chasing through
Danny
the
and
maze, right?
Wendy. Danny and Wendy.
Danny and Wendy going through the maze, right? And it's building up on that
Yeah,
Tuesday,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Say I was
exactly.
say I was given that scene, I would have done it so much more differently because obviously,
Yeah.
like, it's well, I don't get it, but with the same with you as well is sort of to move on from that is I've always sort of been into movies as well.
Mm.
I think you sort of it was part of my introduction earlier, but I am very much into Marvel, and if
Yes,
this whole thing
yes.
was about Marvel, I'd be able to bring a lot to the table. But
And that's why I called you Captain Britannia.
yeah, there we go. Yeah, no,
But yeah,
exactly.
okay, okay.
That's
Benny,
cool.
because I want to make sure that we're giving enough voice time to each of us. Go ahead and hit me with it, Benny. Give me your background on like movies and entertainment, because I know you do. I'll let you
So
explain.
yes, so I actually went the opposite way for school. I actually started off software engineering, and then I ended up graduating with my music degree, my music technology degree, actually. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
so I am the opposite way. So I've been doing music for ever since I was 6 years old. I've been loving everything about that, as well as like acting and stuff. I've been doing musicals around the same time. I've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
in 72 musicals and shows overall.
Nuts,
So I've
dude.
been in a lot. So as well as I've done a lot of things with like I've been able to do some internships over at studios. I've been able
And,
to like actually be an audio engineer. What's up?
and you and I spent some time at the same college together too. Am I wrong?
Yes, so it's you are slightly wrong because you're saying the same college
Yeah,
for
where I did theater and everything.
oh yeah, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay,
So
okay.
that's where I was able to get my I think that was my first one of my first few years. I
Mm-hmm.
was able to actually like do that stuff. It was really cool. I loved it there.
Awesome
But
school.
now it's been a thing where I've had the chance to be able to not only be like at colleges and stuff for any like theater and music and stuff. I've been able to do it like outside of that stuff. But with that being said, when it comes to the movie and everything, I really do think that the music and the scoring and the soundtrack in general, I think everything really did tie in to like the effect that the movie will
Ooh,
put on.
hang on, hang on. I want to keep it to personal backgrounds before we get back into the movie
Oh
discussion.
yeah. Okay.
So I see you want to get back into it. So let me throw it over to Jonathan and give
Yes.
his
You're good.
background, and then we'll get back to it.
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Well, I already knew Corey did some acting. I love hearing that you did as well, Benny, and I love the kind of backwards connection that you and
That's
Odds have.
so
Yeah.
funny.
It's
I
fucking
just love
crazy,
like
honestly.
weird like what's the word I want
Shit,
here?
weird shit like that.
Yeah,
Coincidences.
coincidental. Yeah, coincidental
Yeah.
shit. Irony was the word I wanted. And I knew that wasn't correct because we misused irony all the time.
Ironic.
And the reason I love that, Benny, and you may not know about this about me, I think I've shared it with Corey, is I used to be an actor, and I don't know that one stops being an actor,
True.
but I got my degree in theater performance, but what I had always wanted to be, and I thought acting was a shortcut to, but it turns out it's a parallel road that really only connects if you know the right people, is a writer. I've been writing since I was 8 years old. And at 8 years old, I knew that's what I wanted to do was to write. I'm 32 now, so I've known that for a very long time. I spent most of my 20s and before that, but most of my 20s as a cognizant adult, trying to be an actor, or not trying. If you do it, you are.
Yeah,
This will make
yeah.
that clear to the audience. If you
It's
do
true.
something,
It's
you are
true.
that thing, whether or not people think you're good at it or not. And I went. I did some Atlanta, had my agent, did the auditions, and for Walking Dead and things that you've heard of. And ultimately, not because I wasn't getting roles, because I didn't spend a lot of time doing it before I said
Oh, oh,
I
hello.
started.
Oh, there
Oh,
we
can
go.
you hear me?
Now you're
Yeah.
back. You're back. You're back. You're back.
So I realized I was doing something that I only partly loved, and it was taking time away from the thing that I knew that I was better at, even though I had my theater
Mm.
awards and blah 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 blah. I wanted to write, and so now I during the day I'm a videographer and photographer, and at night or as soon as I clock out of that place, I become a screenwriter. So, I'm about to finish writing my feature. I started writing my second pilot for television.
Very cool.
So that's kind of where I'm at. I haven't worked with Corey yet. I talked to him a couple years ago about doing a short film, and a thing called COVID happened.
We'll make it work. No worries.
But I did have this little. I while I'm here and I know you guys, I might have to throw something together that we can work on together. But
yeah,
so
we'll
that's where it
fly
comes from.
odds out because he's in the UK. We'll bring him over here.
Yeah, we'll get odds over here. Oh, and I'm a diehard Stephen King fan on top of being a movie nerd. So
okay.
Well,
So you've got.
I guess to sorry, would you? Like
No, go for it. Go for it.
All right. To sort of, I suppose, add on to this, to all of this, right? Is I think Sally knows this. Not many people know this, but I've always sort of had like a secret, deep down passion for like voice acting. That sort of idea.
And real quick, we've been messing around with that a little bit on the Twitch channel, playing games that don't have voiceover and doing the voiceover. It's been a lot of fun, and we're gonna do some more of that actually. He's got another game that's coming up that we're going to do that with. We'll do the plugs and stuff at the end of the show, but we'll talk about all that. But yeah, that's been a lot of fun. Go on with the voice acting though.
But bit of a sort of funny and harsh story that I'd like to tell people is there was a time in secondary school, which I think is high school for you guys, but I might be wrong. But I was in school, I was in drama class, and the teacher sort of asked the class, hey, who here would like to pursue some sort of like drama or acting, right? And sort of everyone put their hands up, and I put my hand up. And he went around to every single person and told them if he thought that they had a chance or not. And he said he thought everybody had a chance but me. Right. So it's been a dream, but it's something that I've always been sort of put off with. Sort of due to that fact, right?
Oh, dude, listen, Denzel's college professor told him that he would never be a successful actor.
Denzel Washington.
And he's Denzel Washington, so.
Yeah,
so
man. Hey, yeah.
Only recently I've thought, you know what, fuck that guy. Like I'm gonna try and find some way to do something, and I'm trying.
Nah, man, and we'll do it. We'll keep doing stuff like that on the on our respective Twitch channels as well. And I've got some ideas for other ones past that from what you're doing too. So just to bring it back to so that's everybody. Bring it back to the score. Benny, you were saying you were about to transition back into the score. So go ahead and lead off if you remember where you were to back.
Yeah. So kind of another thing I was going to mention before was the fact of like we had a class that was like it was basically where we took the audio from films and stuff and we either changed it, did all these things. It was called our audio for film. It was our audio for film class. That's where we had our opportunity to basically not only dub things but also to be able to like add in like the actual scores or the soundtracks into the actual into the actual like videos and stuff and kind of make it our own twist and everything. So with that being said, this whole entire movie, like their whole entire score, like everything that they had and it was starting to build up to and stuff really kind of hit hard every single time because like it was little things that they were doing in the scores that were actually helping out with the storytelling overall. So, like, for instance, when, before it even gets anywhere near as wild as it does towards the end, towards the very beginning, when it was, like, I believe it was Jack when he was talking with the
general manager of the hotel?
Yeah, the general manager, thank you. He was talking with him, just, like, trying to get the job and everything, and then when he got it, boom, perfect. During that time, there was a part in the score that it was, like, kind of, like, a mystery type of like it was a mystery type of vibe with it, which is really weird because like when you first are watching you're like that's an interesting choice of music choice for that. And then after a while it starts to be more of a revealing type of tone, and then it starts to get into the point where it gets suspenseful and starts building up to the point where it hits and it's just boom, you're like, whoa, okay, that's a big transition, got it.
There's so really much build in this movie. There's so much build, and I think that's pretty much what this movie is it's building, and it comes to a head at the end, and it's just I think a lot of that is definitely attributed to the score, like we were talking about. I think all the choices that they made are definitely, like I was saying, are very, very interesting, and like when I say interesting, I don't mean just like I mean like it's a choice and it stands out, and it's like, that captures my attention. And that's what I mean by that. And so I want to throw it back over to Johnathan about the score to wrap up this whole like kind of the music section of The Shining. Actually, real quick, Johnathan. Talking about score specifically is something that I wanted to mention was when Danny is experiencing The Shining, that has its own like music. It has its own like theme that's different than the rest of the movie, and I think that itself is very, very, very cool, because when you're experiencing that almost for the first time, he's brushing his teeth and he's talking to Tony, which is a whole other thing, that you start to feel that build, and they use that theme every single time that he's shining throughout the movie. And I thought that was a really cool choice, because it comes back multiple times, like when when they're doing the tour with the cook with I think his Dick was his name. Yeah. And they're doing the tour, and he's talking about, and he calls him Doc, and he's like, and then he's in there talking about the dried goods to Wendy, and it's like you hear the theme building and building and building, and it's like, and it cuts back and forth from Danny to Dick, and it's like, and you hear him say, it's like, would you like some ice cream, Doc? And it's like, as the theme is just going crazy, and it's like, damn, son, like I thought that was a really cool choice.
And
oh, you're frozen. Try again.
Nope.
All right. So there you go. We may have lost him. But until he comes back,
I suppose to sort of like add on, it was very interesting to see how he then asked him if he wanted ice cream, sort of with his actual, moving his mouth afterwards.
Yeah. I thought that whole thing was cool, and just to keep it connected with the music, I thought that was a really cool theme choice, because that happens continuously throughout the film. And there he's back. What's up, Johnathan?
Okay, what's up?
There you go. Yeah, there you go. You're back.
Not sure what's happening in here.
No worries.
I hear everything you guys say, so it's really weird when you couldn't see or hear me or whatever.
So to go back onto the Shining theme itself, not the movie The Shining, but when Danny is shining.
Yeah. So I didn't get a chance to rewatch it because it's such a long movie, and I won't get into it.
It's very true. Very true.
But the particular music you're referring to, it's not even music, right? It's like technically it is, but it's like a droning type sound. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's like screeching and it builds. Yeah,
and I think that's like a mechanic in like every piece of music in this movie. You've got that's kind of dedicated to Danny, and then anytime Jack is going on a rampage, the horns that I was mimicking a second ago, that's kind of his thing. It is the theme of the movie as well, but you see it repeatedly when you know shit's gonna go down when you hear that. And you know that Danny is kind of in his little shining trance when you hear the whatever that sound is. And you mentioned Dick O'Halloran calling him Doc, which connects to the sequel, which I know we're going to kind of stay away from. But
true.
So you kind of see where it comes from. It's because he referred to him as Doc in the first story.
Yeah. And that's, I didn't even think about that, because obviously I've not seen Dr. Sleep. I know Odds is not either. You two up there have probably seen Dr. Sleep, which is the sequel to this movie, Odds.
Yeah. I didn't even know I had a sequel.
And hey, you know what? If you guys are into this and you're loving it, we might just do this again, specifically for that at another time. So that could be cool.
If I may, real quick, I'm not going to go into it, but Odds, honestly, if you didn't love The Shining because of you're not a huge horror person, there's a pretty good chance you'll dig Dr. Sleep a decent amount, I would say.
Okay.
It steps a little out of the horror realm more. And if you do get to watch it, this is for everybody out there. Again, I don't want to get into the story or anything about that.
For sure.
But if you are going to watch it, watch the director's cut. It's 30 minutes longer, and it's much more substantial as far as its connections back to this movie.
And since Odds and I haven't seen it, we might watch it. I might stream it on Discord one time. We can watch it together.
Yeah, maybe. So. Well, I see it was released in 2019, so it's a lot more.
It's very new
and modern.
And featuring one of my personal favorite actors, Ewan McGregor. Love that guy.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that could be something that we could do at some point if you guys are down for it. Obviously, we are going to be doing 3 more podcasts this month, and we'll get into it. But I definitely want to continue to do podcasts, and I might, if you guys are into it, might have you back on again to do sequels of the movies that we're reviewing, because I think that could be fun. I think that could be cool. But yeah, so I think that's. Do you have anything? Anyone has anything else they want to say about the music? Then let's get to the cinematography, because holy fucking shit, dude. This movie, the way this movie is shot, I am just there's no other way to say it. I'm in love with it. I love just about every single shot in this movie, and there's so many that could just be a wallpaper, because of the way that go on.
Oh, I was going to let you go on.
So the way that they there's the opening, because it starts off obviously with the horns in the background, right? The horns, you said, right? As the score is showing you where they're going, because I think it's in what is it, Oregon, I believe, where the hotel is, and they're going up this mountain. What's that?
Colorado.
Yeah, oh, is it? Colorado. Oh, okay, Colorado.
Yeah.
So they're showing this mountain trail as this music's going, and I watched it on my TV in the living room the first time, which was okay. It's an okay TV, but then I watched it again on a 4K TV, and damn, son, those shots are just so impressive. And I'll say,
the opening shots.
Yeah. On my second viewing, I noticed the shadow of the helicopter. I just wanted to throw that in there. Because I didn't see that the first time, but then I was looking at this whole big TV, and I see in the bottom corner, I was like, oh yeah, it's a helicopter. I was wondering how they did this shot. Figured it was a helicopter. But I think that's definitely one of my favorite things about this movie is the cinematography and how that connects with the setting, because we're going to pair together cinematography and scenery in this little segment here, because hot damn are the sets, oh man, they are so good in this movie, especially some of the stranger ones, like the red bathroom, the green bathroom, as you see in the background of the podcast, the hexagonal carpeting, and the whole hotel, and then the maze. Everything is just so interesting to me. And I thought, I'm not 100% sure, but obviously John Alcott was the one who did the cinematography. I'm sure he worked very, very closely with Kubrick about his vision. So I don't know who's influencing who on the way that they wanted to do things, but whoever made these decisions to do these long panning shots of just them walking along the maze, and then following them through the maze, following Danny as he's triking around the hotel, just these big, massive shots, and then just tracking the entire time. And then there's a point where Jack is obviously later in the movie. Spoilers if you haven't seen this movie. You should have seen this movie before watching this. But as Jack is axing the door, I thought that looked so cool, because it tracked every single time, and I thought that was so cool to me. I don't know why. I just thought it was interesting. But Benny, I want to throw it to you. What did you think about the way that they framed this movie? The way that they shot everything, these long panning shots. Give me your opinion, man.
So the way that I really loved everything about that. The biggest thing that I really noticed right off the bat when I first saw it, because the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, okay, this is an older movie. It was whatever. It was way ahead of its time. Not gonna lie, it was way ahead of its time when it comes to the framing wise, and when it comes to the actual shots and everything. So when it came to the overhead views and stuff, where you saw the helicopter and everything, but you just saw how it really kind of shows every single little detail of what the actual hotel and everything had, which was really cool, because when it came to the maze, it was there was that little shot that we were able to see those people, we were able to see
the model of the maze. That was really cool.
So I love seeing that stuff too. So it's just the fact that they use little things like that really kind of just tie things together multiple times throughout the movie. It's really, really cool just to see that stuff. So
and to piggyback off the cinematography and the setting is that the hotel layout itself doesn't make any sense, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but it doesn't connect properly. But I'm gonna throw it to you, Odds. What did you think about the shots, the way this movie is framed, the setting, the scenes?
Well, with the helicopter thing, not something that I noticed, but it is. I did notice
it was an aerial.
That there were shots, from the air, and obviously, like I mentioned before, I'm a bit of a Marvel fan, so obviously now in the modern day, I know that how how that would be done these days would be a drone, right?
Yeah.
But I was thinking, there's no way, like back then, that would have been how it was done. So I don't know why I'd never thought a helicopter could be a thing, but no, I had no idea how it was done. And the thing with sort of one thing I'd sort of like to add to what you said, which is a lot to do with tracking, but the amount of long shots
Yeah, it's
that
impressive.
happened, it is absolutely insane, because you've got to think, right, everything has to be perfect for every single second, and
And
because
real quick, a quick fun fact on this is that Stanley Kubrick was notoriously known for his copious amount of takes that he would take for every single scene, every single moment. This movie holds the Guinness World Record for the longest or the most retook scene with dialogue. And it's that moment. So like he reshot this scene with dialogue like 127 times, I think is what it was. And it's that scene where Jack is kind of leading Wendy up the staircase with the baseball bat. That scene took 127 tries to get that what Stanley Kubrick thought was perfect.
it is such a good scene.
It is, and we'll get into the acting and everything, but can you imagine how difficult that is on an actor as a person to have to, specifically Shelley Duvall, having to stay in that emotional state so like for probably weeks and months on end, and it's so ridiculous. We'll talk about it more in there, but man, it's just it's crazy, dude. And the fact that he was able to do all these long panning and tracking shots over and over and over and over again, it's painstaking, man. Painstaking.
Yeah, no, honestly, and because you got to think as sort of with long shots as well, is you've got to say there's like a long shot which lasts a minute, right? Like a minute is barely any time at all, but when you have to focus for a minute, and you've got to make sure to do the right things and say the right things and have the right facial expressions throughout the entire minute, it's like the longest minute of your entire life, right? So like, and because there were first of all, the long shots were definitely some long shots which were longer than a minute, and there were definitely a lot of long shots. So it's crazy to see sort of, how it all sort of how they've done it and how it does sort of work, and they pulled it off.
Very impressive. Go ahead, Johnathan.
Yeah, so there are a lot of long shots in The Shining, which it is known for. You're absolutely correct. One of the other things that like, and you may have to like go back to like double check on this now, but I want you to note how few scenes in The Shining with Jack and Wendy together are filmed where you see both of them on camera at the same time. You almost always see them cut back and forth between the two of them. And the one conversation that I was able to quickly pull up that they're having where you see both of them at the same time, you only ever see the face of one and the back of the head of the other if the other is in that shot.
Is that the mirror shot?
No, they're sitting on the bed having a discussion about Danny, I believe.
Okay.
And the thing I get from that is like there's like body language and there's your verbal language, and then in movies you get the other language of just being a spectator in on something, and the language of the cinematographer and what their shots are saying. And the whole movie, we know that Jack and Wendy have the huge like canyon-sized gap in their relationship, and it only grows and grows as they go. And so I thought that it was brilliant to almost never have them in the same shot together. And then as a contrast to that, whenever Danny is sharing a scene with one of them, Danny and his adult counterpart they're almost always in the shot together, whether he's sitting on Jack's knee or he's sitting on the bed talking to his mom. You see them together because there's this fight with both of them trying to say like, I'm deserving to be a parent. More so Jack, because he's got a lot more to prove in that way, because he physically assaulted his kid prior to the movie taking place. But yeah, just taking note of what the cinematography in this movie says about the individual relationships, because then a lot of times when you see like Dick O'Halloran, unless he's having a conversation with like Danny, Dick is in shots with multiple people at one time at multiple points throughout the movie, because he's this kind of like together, open book type person that wants you to know you're welcome.
And he's very charismatic in that role too.
Oh yeah. It's a travesty that Kubrick felt he needed to kill him off in the movie. I know we're talking about cinematography, but that's not what happened in the book.
Oh really?
Yeah. That's a big point of contention.
We'll get to that for sure.
Yeah.
But wow.
That's my big takeaway from the cinematography in this movie is just how the shots are framed to show relationships. I would even go to the red bathroom because cinematography is color and lighting and all those.
Dude,
stuff.
I love that. I love that set. Like it just looks so good.
Yeah, and spoilers, it may show up again in another Shining related movie. But the times you see Jack with people in The Shining, and spoiler alerts, is in a room full of ghosts that aren't really there at the party scene. And in the bathroom, you get the wide shots of him standing in the red bathroom with another human. So you see him interacting in wide shots with multiple people, with every person in the movie except for his wife. And that's one of the most significant takeaways for me.
Very cool. I didn't even think about that like perspective of things, like seeing them in different, like it cuts to them. They're not like on screen together, like with their faces. That's very interesting because I didn't even think about that. But that's just another thing because I watched part of the that documentary you told me to watch, Room 237, and one of the things they talk about is Stanley Kubrick's like subliminal messaging. Like he does all these things that are like very, very subtle that kind of allude to bigger things, like you're saying, like having them not appear with their faces on screen together for the most part, like showcasing the fact that they do have that, like you said, canyon-sized gap in their relationship, that thing that is just growing further and further apart between the two of them, leading to what ends up happening in the movie. And I think that's just all these little things, they really, really pay off, and I think it shows because this movie took 5 years for Kubrick to make, and that's pretty extensive for a movie. Like that's a pretty long time. I think it was shot in 56 weeks, so a little over a year. Apparently there's some sort of like argument, there's contention over how long shooting actually took. I don't know why that wasn't like recorded or anything. But the fact that it took that long for him to do all this stuff, like 11 weeks to write the script, and apparently, fun fact, Stephen King wrote him a screenplay that Kubrick didn't even read. Like he literally grabbed it and just tossed it. Like he gave him one, and Kubrick was like, nah, man, nah. And it's we'll get to the contentions between the two of them, but yeah, man, I think all the settings, like the scenes, the sets, everything about this is just so cool, and I really see why it's such an iconic movie, is because it's got these fantastic shots of the maze coming down, the bathroom, the green bathroom where the woman, like her hand grabs the side of the thing and opens up, and it's not what you expect right off the bat. And all of these, it's just very well done. And the more that I talk about it, I feel like the more that I like this movie. And it's.
May I make a side note here?
Yeah, sure.
Another rec. Have you seen it? It ties in, I promise. Have you seen The Shape of Water? Anybody?
I have.
Here?
Yeah.
So in The Shape of Water, I want you to go back and watch it. It won Best Picture, so it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, it's a great movie, guys. If you haven't seen it, it's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Shape of Water.
Shape of Water, directed by Guillermo del Toro.
So good.
And go back and watch it, and he uses that same color green throughout almost the entire movie. And
as the bathroom?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it serves basically the exact same purpose that the green in that bathroom served, but he takes it and spans it throughout like a whole movie.
Real quick, I want to talk. Is anyone like super pressed for time? Because I know we're running a little long in the tooth. I feel like. No. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Y'all good?
Okay. Good.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, cool. So because I know I said an hour to like an hour and a half. We might go a little bit longer, just because this will be the first time, and I had to introduce all of you guys. We won't be doing that again as we go through this. So this one might run a little bit longer, and it's fitting because this is probably out of the movies that we're gonna be watching the longest one. So it makes sense. But yeah, I just think I'll definitely go back and I'll check out The Shape of Water again because I don't need an excuse to watch that movie again. It's so good. But because I saw that anyway, that's not the same podcast. But I really loved just all these so iconic things that this movie does. And obviously, I just recently saw this movie for the first time, but have seen the trike scene. I have seen the two girls. I have seen this hexagonal pattern. Exactly. It's these things that are just so iconic in media and entertainment. And after seeing the movie, it makes sense as to why, because it's so well done and so well planned that you can just see the care and dedication that Kubrick takes, regardless of all the the shitty things that happened on set. Like, he definitely made a masterpiece, and we'll talk a little bit as we get into the acting performances and the writing and stuff. But I want to know, does anyone else have anything to add about the cinematography and the set? Anything?
Actually, yeah, both of those things together. You brought up Room 237, the documentary. I mentioned when I first brought up to you, had you seen it? And I mentioned I hadn't seen it myself yet. I went ahead and started it this morning. For anybody watching this that hasn't seen that documentary, and forgive me, Corey, if you felt differently, but I made it halfway through before I was just like, this is nothing but a YouTube video that is 2 hours long about conspiracies with no supporting evidence as to what any one given thing in The Shining means.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, Kubrick was clearly a very deliberate person. If you've seen more than one of his movies, then you see kind of the deliberation that this man goes through. He's known to be perhaps the greatest filmmaker of all time. But some of the things that they start going in on that they say are symbolism in The Shining, I think are just nothing but pure coincidence, and that's okay. Sometimes things can be coincidental, and it's all right.
So if you guys haven't seen it, sorry, friendly, that's not happening in the chat today. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and refund that, odds. If you have not seen that, it might be worth watching just for the funniness of the documentary.
Okay, so
because
you did laugh. Perfect.
It is definitely because they're talking about obviously it is mentioned in passing that this takes place on an Indian burial ground or something like that, all right? But then they get really, really, really into that idea about you'll have to see the documentary. If you've seen The Shining, it's almost worth watching this just to see the craziness that this documentary is.
One crazy example, here you go, because you guys were talking specifically about this. They tried to relay the staircase scene with the baseball bat to being the equivalent of sacrifices at the pyramids during the Mayan rule, and it's just
that's such bullshit.
How hard did you have to think to come up with this apocalypto theory?
It's like comparing it to the This Is Sparta scene. It's
that's what they were doing.
It's it's the same action, but it's not the same thing.
Exactly. It's so funny. It's so funny, man. And honestly, we could probably do a whole nother podcast just shitting on that documentary, because I swear there was a couple things that I thought were interesting about it, but they do go into these crazy conspiracy theories about it, and it has no merit. But one of the things that was very interesting to me on the documentary was the way they talked about the layout of the hotel, because that was interesting. That was pretty accurate, I thought. Because someone mentioned this earlier in the chat, I think it was Thomas, that he was saying that when Jack walks in at the beginning of the movie to the general manager's hotel, or to his room, his office, he goes in there, there's a window right there, and you see very clearly outside that there's a window, and it's there's trees and brush and light and stuff. But when you watch Danny do his triking scene, he goes around that corner, and Jack goes around that. They all go around that corner in the movie, and it's a wall. There's no window there. It's just inside the hotel, and it's these inconsistencies are very, very Thomas said in the live chat, there's also a scene from the very beginning where there's a window showing the outside, but you can see a hallway go to the back of the room, so there should not be a window there, and that's correct, because I don't know why Kubrick had no desire to make this correct, and I guess it doesn't really matter. It's just not consistent.
I think maybe that's a place where I would agree that there was some sort of deliberate attempt to make the hotel make no sense. Yeah, because Jack's losing his mind, and he's losing his mind because of the history at the Overlook.
Fair.
Kind of, one could go as far as to say that the spirit of the Overlook is possessing Jack. and I think that in that sense, it makes sense that the geography of the hotel is kind of jacked up. And but that's just me saying like, hey, I could understand that theory. There's literally no merit necessarily to it, but
It's
it
fair,
just
though.
kind of makes sense to me that that would actually be a choice.
And I
Another
think
thing.
go on, Hans, go on.
All right. Well, another thing that I picked up on was obviously, his slow descent into madness, right? And obviously at the start of the movie, it was very sunny. It was, outside. There was loads of greenery. There was everything. But as he sort of descended into insanity, obviously, just the surrounding, like, weather went into the winter, right? But it's sort of like, with that, the color theme changes as well, right? From a very bright and vibrant place with a lot of like bright colors to black and white and snowy, and and you can sort of like, it sort of like follows
Blue.
his it sort of follows him as he goes down and sort of becomes more of a darker person and stuff.
And and I want to go ahead and we can use this to transition right into the acting, because holy fucking shit, dude. In my opinion, I'll go ahead and I'll kick it off. I think almost all around the board, almost completely. There's a couple things that we can talk about that are like with Danny. Of course, he's a child actor who does, I think, still an amazing job. But man, the acting in this movie is like top notch. Like, I think everybody does a fantastic job. From Jack Nicholson to Shelly Duvall, and man, Shelly Duvall, like, upon seeing the second time and realizing what she has to go through, it is so impressive, the performance that she gives, because she has unarguably said this was her most difficult role. And like you said, Jonathan, in the beginning, this is probably why we don't see her too much anymore. Is because of this movie, because Stanley Kubrick pushed Shelly Duvall so hard to get this performance out of her, to do this sort of thing, and it's absolutely insane. Every single person, like I said, in this movie, I think has a fantastic job. There are some moments with Danny that I think are a little, but of course he's a child actor, but for the most part, I think he does really, really well. He's what, 6 years old in this movie? Or 5 or something like that?
I think 5.
It's really impressive, because he has this, like, when he's just walking around and when he's doing stuff, when he's not doing like the crazy like shit, when he's like foaming at the mouth and stuff, exactly. He's got this, like, for a kid, he's got this like gravitas to him where he's walking around, he looks like he's standing upright.
He's
like
very mature,
he is
very smart.
It's very impressive, for someone that young to pull that off, asking these questions and talking about this stuff. And then this whole thing with Tony was his idea. That was not in the book. That was not Kubrick's idea or anything. He was the one. He was like, when I talk to Tony, I want to use this. It was really interesting. I think that's a pretty good job. But obviously, this is one of Jack Nicholson's like defining performances as an actor, and it's absolutely, because I haven't seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is another one of his that is super defining. But man, he is incredible in this movie. And eating all those cheese sandwiches, man, they really paid off. Go ahead, Jonathan. I want your opinion on the acting.
Well, I'm just gonna start with Shelly. I'd be remiss. I want to say, Kubrick certainly got a hell of a performance out of Shelly Duvall, but the record would show that he didn't necessarily treat her the way he did exclusively for a performance. I think they just outright didn't like each other. So she was mistreated, but she still put in work. And considering also that they rewrote her character's personality entirely different than it was in the novel. In the novel, she is this. I believe she's blonde. 2, which is kind of irrelevant, but she was created to be this kind of stereotypical female hero for what they still make them look like, where it's this like blonde lady, and she had all this gusto about her. Well, then you watch the movie,
and she's not like that.
Yeah, and she's not like that at all. They play her as a weakling, and it feels, when you know the contrast between the characters, it feels so much more deliberate that they're doing this, and she handles it so well. And in the end, of course, they do end up making this harrowing escape, and they do survive the terror of her husband. But so she knocks it out of the park. Obviously, a defining role for Jack Nicholson. It kind of surprises me that I don't think anybody in this movie won an Academy Award for their
Really?
performance.
Let me find out. Keep
Which is
talking. I'll find out.
crazy. But at the very least, I would hope somebody got nominated. But the Academy has long hated horror movies, so who knows? And then Danny, yeah, Danny's good. Scatman Crothers, fantastic, charismatic. So many things could be said about him. Of course, they take him out a little earlier than the book, which is to say that the book didn't take him out. And I would have loved to have him on screen more. But as far as the performances we do get, I would say that, yeah, the one place that only occasionally falls short was in Danny's performances. But you get that when you have actors that are that young sometimes.
Wow. So I don't see any Oscar nominations like at all. Unless I'm not looking at this right, but there's Saturn Awards. I don't know what a Saturn Award is at all. But there's Saturn. It won Saturn Awards, I guess. I don't know what that is. But something interesting that I wanted to bring up is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Razzies. The Razzies are like awards that people, that I don't know what organization does it, but they give out like for like the most shit stuff in movies. and Shelley Duvall has a nominee for Worst Actress, and Stanley Kubrick has a nominee for Worst Director, which is really interesting to me. And I obviously, I personally think as an actor and as knowing what it takes to bring a performance like that, I could sort of see where you're like, oh, what is she doing? But like when you see like what she's going through and you think about the massive amount of effort that this took, it's just impressive. Obviously, I mean, again, it could come down to the fact that it wasn't who the book said she was supposed to be, perhaps. Maybe these Razzie guys are big fans of the Shinings of Stephen King. It's possible, but yeah, I don't see them winning any Oscars or even being nominated.
Which is, even though it's a horror movie, it still kind of surprised me, because Kubrick, I think even then, was still heralded as this master filmmaker. So it's strange that they kind of turn their noses up at it, but that's really how horror gets treated even today, with like movies like Hereditary. But yeah,
crazy. Go ahead, Benny.
Yeah. Of course, like when it comes to the acting and everything, I thought that, of course, I'm gonna say, yeah, they all did really well, but there were definitely those scenes that each one of them have at least one or two scenes that they just like really just shined in, like no pun intended. But
nice. Yes. Shine, you say?
So, of course, so literally, it's a thing where all of them had those moments where they were just like showing off their really, really good, just, I shouldn't say really good acting abilities. Yeah, you could say that, but like, when it comes to their, let's see, in particular, let's talk about Danny first. Danny had really good, he had really good scenes whenever he was talking as Tony, or he had really good scenes when he was, basically showing how scared he was about like what was going on with Jack and everything. So he had really, really good scenes like that, as well as the maze scene. I thought that was really good. Only thing I didn't really like necessarily was like how when he was going through, like when he was getting to the very end, he was like taking his steps back and everything, doing what he normally does to kind of get away from him and everything. He really did not show any really like emotion at all. He was just and then he was done. But I was like, okay, it's fine. It's whatever. It's fine. But he did really good overall. And then Wendy, the person who played Wendy, she did phenomenal. Like, of course, we understand that, like, they're, like, in comparison to, like, the book versus this is a kind of night and day when it comes to her. But it's a thing where she still made it seem as though, like, she was trying to be brave for Danny, which is really cool, seeing like how she was really showing her like her motherly instincts and everything were really truly kicking in and everything. It was really cool to just see like she made it seem like it was just like an average mother who was just trying to help out her kid
At first, yeah.
escape and everything. Of course, but it's just really cool to see like how she actually, like, it seemed as though like she was truly terrified, like not just acting but like truly terrified with what was going on and everything. So that was really just cool seeing like how she was able to handle that stuff. Then Jack, he definitely I will say was the star of everything. Like his whole entire, like, the transition from when he first started to like when he got to the very end and stuff, and was a very big like lunatic and everything. His transition, like his slow progression or slow digression, I guess, into madness and everything was really portrayed like excellent. Like it was insane just to see like the whole entire, like, it was even his facial expressions, his demeanor, everything about him, his body language and everything.
Well, that's like,
It
that
slowly
is Jack
started to.
Nicholson though. Like that is
Oh,
like,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
his
that's true.
his face. You know what I mean? He always, like, the eyebrows. He always uses his like entire face so
Of course, and that was
effectively.
amazing. Oh yeah, and with that, like, he's had that chance to be able to, like, he was transitioning from like being this, just like, he wasn't necessarily like the happiest person in the world when they first came in either, but like he was a little bit more peppier during that time, but then he started getting more and more like psychotic peppy, and then he started getting really psychotic overall, and it just kept on transitioning to that point where he got too like really psychotic and like, I'm going to kill everyone type of motive and stuff. So it was really cool just like seeing that transition from him and everything. So but yeah, I mean, other than that, I would say low-key every single actor and actress had amazing acting. Even the woman in the bathroom scene and stuff, that was literally insane regardless, because like it was cool. Like that one's more or less the cinematic like change of stuff when she was making out with Jack and everything, and like you just saw just his face, but like you saw the back of her head. You saw the transition and everything. That's more cinematic, of course, but you saw the transition in her hand first, and then you're like, okay, then you start seeing her body and everything, and then it just changes up completely. That's insane. But like it was really cool, the fact that like, I'm not gonna be like, oh yeah, she did an amazing job. She didn't really do that much of anything, but it's fine. But it was just the fact that like she was portraying as this really crazy lady, but then when he came, like when Jack Nicholson, when he came back and he was, or not Jack Nicholson, oh, I was right, when he came back to Wendy and everything, and he was like, yeah, I didn't see a single thing. Even his face in that, like, he really just kind of sold it and was like, oh yeah, you guys are just crazy, basically. It was really cool seeing that. So, but yeah, that's how I thought about the acting. It was amazing. I thought so.
I agree. It was very well done. Odds, you can go ahead and throw it up if you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like a lot has been said, so I'll sort of try and add something new. But I
And
suppose
feel
my
free,
main,
you guys can like chime in. Like it doesn't have to be like
Yeah.
round table.
my main thing, right, and this is the thing that's I sort of have with everything, and I don't think it's a very popular sort of like opinion or outlook on movies. But when there's a bad guy, when there's a villain in a story, this is the same in Marvel actually. But with this movie as well, obviously, when there's a villain, and they genuinely make you hate them, that character will always be my favorite character in the entire movie. Just because, like, because obviously you spend the entire movie hating them, but then you look back at it and you think, obviously the credits roll and stuff, and you're like, hold on, this is just a movie, isn't it? So like, when it, you can't really, the more that you hate them, the more you've sort of got to admit that you love them for like what a good job they did.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think with Jack, 100%, I was like, this guy, fucking hell, dude, he's completely losing. Like this guy, fucking hell, honestly.
I mean, that's like every actor's great dilemma is like, if I'm faced with, and the other actors here can obviously, you can all disagree, but if I'm faced with the choice, like, do I want to play the hero or the villain, then like Odds is saying, like, I'm probably going to go with the cool villain, like 9 times out of 10.
It's
Yeah,
definitely
no,
way more
definitely.
interesting to portray that and to kind of talk about that sort of character, because obviously in everyday life we're just people who go about doing things. We try to be good people for the most part, do things like to help others, but it's so much more interesting to see a villain do his thing and kind of shine again in that role. So we taking shots every time we say that. So I never talked about what we were drinking, but I'm sorry. What are you drinking, Jonathan?
No, I'm not drinking anything. What are we supposed to be drinking? Do I need to catch up? Fucking hell.
I'm actually drinking. This is look at that smart water over there. I'm drinking little Evan Williams bottled in bond. People think
Oh,
Evan
okay.
Williams is a cheap whiskey, and price wise it is, but bottled in bond is 128 proof, so it gets the
Ooh,
job done.
jeez. Nice, dude. Nice.
Fucking hell.
I'm just rocking this classic, non-sponsored Mountain Dew Rise energy drink, peach mango Dawn.
Be sponsored
But
Mountain Dew.
yeah, if you want to sponsor, come on, please, 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 please. I've been trying to get them to sponsor me the entire time, but so I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously it's easy to say that everybody does so well in this movie, and it's very admirable about what they're doing and what they're bringing to the table, and I think it is absolutely outrageous that none of these actors won any sort of awards for this role, especially Jack Nicholson. Like, this is definitely one of his best performances, and it's just so crazy that they didn't get recognized for it. But like Jonathan said, it comes down to the fact that you've got these issues with the Academy Awards not wanting to recognize horror movies, and until recently they weren't really within the last like 10 years or so, they weren't really recognizing like superhero movies either. But that also goes to the fact that they weren't as good until recently, I feel like.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But
To
horror
add,
movies, yeah.
to add a couple more things, just to add one more thing, I would sort of, one thing that I don't think anybody's brought up yet is the two sisters, and I think they are genuinely my favorite two characters. I suppose,
Ooh,
obviously I'm only
interesting,
supposed to have
interesting.
one favorite character, but I suppose they are in a way just one character, right? Because you always see them together, and I think they're sisters in real life as well, aren't they?
I'm not
I would
100%
have to
sure,
imagine
actually,
so.
but
I
probably.
think they might be. They probably are.
It'd be crazy if not the
But
case.
but it's just they never really, the closest I feel like the closest the whole movie came to a jump scare was when um Danny like sort of turned the corner on his little scooter thing, and they were both sort of standing there. It wasn't that scary, but it was sort of quite creepy. But the way that they're just synchronized with everything, with what they say and sort of where they walk, how they walk, and
Yeah, for sure.
because you can sort of tell that they're definitely not real. They're definitely like a ghost or a spirit or something.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
it's crazy. It's crazy just because everything that they do and say is completely in sync, and that they are genuinely, my favorite characters of the entire thing. Yeah, honestly, it's insane.
All right. So I want to go ahead and I want to throw it over to Jonathan, because I want him to kind of talk about this more so, because I am not well versed in the novel whatsoever. So I don't know the differences between the adaptation and the actual novel itself. So I wanted to talk about the writing, the story itself. But I wanted to give Jonathan kind of like the lead here and tell me about the novel differences between the two of them.
So I guess what I could have done was cheated and pulled up a internet list, but I didn't do that. Some of the notable ones, like I talked about, the characterization of Wendy is really probably the biggest, because probably a lot of people read The Shining after the movie came out. I find that the characterization in the movie is almost more interesting because it doesn't have this final girl vibe like slasher movies have, where like you have your female lead, that she's going to survive. She doesn't really get an arc most of the time. She's a vehicle for plot. This making her more meek, both in personality and choosing somebody that looks vulnerable. And I don't mean that as an insult to Shelley Duvall.
But you're right,
It's just
100%.
it's just she has that air about her, in a very charismatic way. She's a great actress. But that adds a depth to it, because now I'm not sure if I'm not familiar with the story, if I come into this blind, I'm not sure this lady's making out of it. She doesn't give me any sort of sign that she's making it out alive. And so that she does makes her have kind of a built-in arc where she starts as somebody that you're just like, oh, if somebody shows up with an axe, this lady's dead. And then at the end, her and her son are the survivors of this. I want to say massacre, but in the grand scheme of things, he killed one person, right? Yeah, he killed one
Yeah.
person the entire time they're there. Which is the other crazy thing about calling it a horror movie, rolling back a little bit, is that one person gets killed in this entire movie. We see a lot of dead people, but only one person dies.
Well, technically two right?
Two people
Yeah,
died.
yeah.
Only one person is murdered.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting way of looking at it. But some other things, like the alcoholism of Jack is ramped up a lot more in the novel as to why he is the way he is. It's a lot more a commentary on addiction than the movie pans out to be. I actually think that the pacing of the movie is better, even though for a movie it's more deliberately paced, but I think the pacing is better. I find it scarier than the book, and again, that could hinge on the characterization of the characters themselves. The other one I touched on was Dick O'Halloran doesn't die in the book, and as a matter of fact, he survives to come back in the sequel.
That's crazy to me that's such a because he's such a cool character.
So Stanley Kubrick, I believe, killed him because of his contention for Stephen King. It was one of those things where he deliberately chose to make a decision counter to the book, to be petty, essentially, and so he then commits one of film's greatest cliches in doing so, and so it's kind of a bit of a detractor. He gets back on track, but for me, it's just like, okay. So that's a big one. Yeah, I think just through contextual things that we've said, I've hit on a lot of them. The room number's different, but obviously there was a more real world reason for why the room number is different.
Of course,
yeah, there's not a lot more that I can think of off the top of my head, because you even actually brought up some yourself, like the finger thing. But those are the big ones that I can think of. I'll have to find a list sometime.
I'll tell you, I did read one more. I read that cool. in the beginning, when you see that Jack is driving this like yellow Beetle Volkswagen all the way up the mountainside. Apparently in the book it's actually red. And one of the things that Stanley Kubrick wanted to do is that this is very, very metaphorical here, is that he wanted to say to Stephen King that this is no longer his vehicle. This is now my vehicle here, because he changed that whole thing where it's like, this is now my movie. This is my story now. So you can get your shit out of here, basically, is what he was saying to Stephen King, because there was so much contention between the two of them. And for what it's worth, I mean, the movie's, obviously I've not read the book, so it might not be the perfect adaptation, but the movie still flourished and did its job, and it was so well done that when it comes down to it, it is very interesting behind the scenes. But Stanley Kubrick still did a fantastic job. However painstakingly that he pushed his actors, whatever, all the shitty things that he did behind scene to people, and the contention between Stephen King and between himself and Shelly Duvall. It's shitty, but it made for a great movie. So it's
To show you again another, and this is not a Room 237 type conspiracy, but you bring up that the car they end up using is a yellow car, and as a note on his deliberate way of going about things, again, yellow is used as this color of betrayal, and so to make it a yellow car for him to say, hey, guess what, dude, I stole your shit, it's mine now, feels very deliberate as well.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that as a color scheme thing in general. Very interesting. But yeah, so I mean, overall, I think that's like I said, it makes for a really good movie. Sucks that they didn't get along. Maybe it could have been a really fantastic adaptation, but for what it's worth, the movie came out really, really, really well. And I kind of wanted to go to transition into that fact, unless any of you guys have anything pressing to say about the movie as well. I wanted to talk about where this kind of lands in like your movie list, like your greatest hits, like that sort of thing. Like where does this rank, like roundabout about where, like, compared to other movies, if you understand what I'm saying? Like Jonathan, I'll go ahead and let you take the lead.
For me,
It's a tough question.
yeah, no. You know what? I actually have a quick way of quick referencing where this does and does not land. Oh, the app undownloaded itself. Apple. I'm pretty sure. It's not even. It's not in my top 10 favorites. Not because I don't love it. I think at this point,
There's just so many
it's pretty clear
movies.
that I feel. Yeah, there's a lot of movies. I don't know that it's in my top 10 overall movies. Top 10 horror movies. Probably, yeah, for sure it's up there. Probably in the top 5. But yeah, if I'm just playing the rank game as far as things I like to watch, it's probably not even top 10. If I really think about it and think of best movies, which is vastly different than favorite,
For sure.
then I would probably say that it is one of the top 10 best based on the cultural impact that it had. And it had that cultural impact not because people were laughing and goofing at how ridiculous it is, because it's not, but it had the cultural impact because it was executed very, very, very well. And I think that speaks to Kubrick, despite the fact that he was a bit of a miser about a lot of things. I think it speaks highly of him that he made this decision to be subversive to the source material, not for dramatic approval, but because he wanted to make a point, and it still carries on the legacy that it does in spite of those things, if not, as I kind of said earlier to somebody else, because of those things.
For sure, man. I agree. Odds, I want to throw it to you because I know obviously this is not your genre, your thing. So hit me with it, man. Hit me with your brutality.
Oh, it was absolutely shit. No, I'm kidding. No, I don't know. I'd say definitely I'm the same in that it's definitely not in my top 10. When it comes to top 10 horror and thriller and stuff, I definitely have a list, but I don't even think I've watched 10 horror movies in my entire life, to be honest.
So this by default makes it.
By default is in my top 10 or top however many horror movies I've watched.
Hey, we're gonna be watching 3 more this month, so you'll have a little bit more
true. To be fair, even if I had watched 10 horror movies, I will say it was a very good movie, you know, at the end of the day. One thing that I suppose...
Oh, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but I have got to get this out there because I had this question the entire time and I completely forgot about it until this moment. What the fuck is up with that pig costume, that bear costume that dude?
Oh yeah, dude.
Wait a second, like hold on. I almost completely forgot about it. But what the fuck was all of that about? Does anybody have any clue?
You know, I haven't heard anything about the meaning behind it, nor do I remember if it made the book. I actually need to watch the movie now because there's the some of the camera operators, they have commentary on the DVD. I need to watch that. They might say something about it, but it definitely had a lasting impact as well. Because for anyone that may have maybe 30 Seconds to Mars fans, which I'm not a huge one, but their song The Kill or The Killing was Jared Leto's take on The Shining, and in the music video they have like the same thing. Somebody's in a room with somebody in an animal costume. It's very furry-esque.
Yeah.
I think it may have been just one of those things. Like sometimes when I'm writing something, I ask myself like, I'm not asking myself what makes sense. I'm saying what in this moment is going to throw the audience off, and I don't need to provide a reason because I'm the fucking creator of this thing. And it very much feels like one of those moments because you don't look back and go, that's what all the times I've seen it, I've never looked at it and gone, that's what the stuffed animal, not the stuffed animal, but the person
the bear,
in the costume
right?
means.
Yeah. He's got his butt flap open and
yeah, I really think it's just that. It's to make you sit there and go, what the fuck?
Honestly.
That's the point. And it worked. I think it
It,
worked.
it did, and, and I want to read my notes off real quick because in the first take that I did this, I have written down guy in bear costume question mark what the fuck question mark
There you go.
and then second viewing I have guy in bear costume all capitals what the fuck question
Kubrick is doing this in his grave right now. He's fucking like,
Oh yeah.
oh, like honestly, dude, it threw. That's what gave me whiplash. I'll tell you, damn, dude. Like we talk about the score and everything, but like that came out of nowhere and it just like smacked me across the face. I was
just
like,
taps. Odds is freaked out by ladies getting their skin ripped off, and Corey is freaked out by people dressed as teddy bears and their butts showing. Gotcha.
well, I mean,
you
yeah,
know-
he was also performing
You
some
know how
acts there.
there
so-
are
Makes more
sometimes.
sense.
You know how there are sometimes points in movies where it's like you watch it, you see it, you think, "What the fuck," and then but you don't. When you sort of like finish the movie and look back at it, unless you've taken notes like Sully, you have. I just didn't remember it. So like when I watched it the second time and I saw it again, I was like, "Oh yeah, that happened," and I still had no idea. You know, I just.
I needed
Oh,
to make
fuck
sure I
no.
hit on that. Benny, do you have anything to say on?
On that, so when I was watching it again today, I was like, I still don't understand, and I'm very glad of the fact that you brought that up because I do not understand still. I've been trying to figure that out for the longest time. I even tried looking it up, and it didn't really give me anything. It just said that it was there, and I was like,
No.
that does not help
Nice.
me at
No,
all.
no,
And I
no,
was like,
no.
all right,
So
cool,
I mean,
whatever.
yeah. I mean,
But
gosh.
yeah, but no, in all actuality though, I definitely did. When I was watching it, I was like, okay, this is gonna be something that's really gonna be like big or something, because it was like leading up to something, and then all of a sudden it just showed that, and I was like, what? Okay, I guess
It makes
that
no
works.
sense.
Because
like,
I was
there's
like,
just
I was gonna have someone or something that like we've seen in the movie before, or like something that's gonna like hint at like the group of people in the gold room or something like that, like something like that. But then all of a sudden, this, I was like, oh,
nah. You know, it's
okay.
Kubrick was sitting there railing lines, and he was like, "I've got an idea. Like, this is what we're doing." Like, that's all. I mean, there's no other explanation in my mind. Like, well,
Oh, yeah.
he's just it. Like Johnathan said, it's one of those where he just wants to be like, "What the fuck?" Like, and then
Oh,
that's
yeah.
it. That's it. Like,
We came up with it on a Tuesday, I would imagine.
yeah, there you go. Yeah. Had to have been. That's the only explanation. But
Oh, yeah.
to go back to you, Odds, yeah, I mean, you're saying that it's like by default in your top 10 horror movies,
Yeah.
but like overall on your second viewing, you thought,
I definitely understood it a lot more. And one thing I was going to say, which is something I've been wanting to say, pulling it back to the fun facts, is I don't know if you guys have ever seen Ready Player One, but there is a part in Ready Player One when they're investigating something and they go into the world of The Shining, and so obviously I've seen that, and so when Sally, obviously you came up to me and you were like, "Hey, can you be in this podcast? Obviously you're going to have to watch these movies." And I said, "Yeah." The amount of things that I saw that I sort of knew about, and especially at the end with the painting with all of the people, that is something that I recognized, right? And not because obviously in Ready Player One, the sort of creator guy in Ready Player One was in that image as well. And I thought that's crazy because that's actually another thing that I wanted to talk about as well, actually, is that painting. What is that?
you mean the picture at the end where
The
where
picture where he's like in it and it's
yeah,
like
from
a
the
party.
1921.
Yeah.
So I'll say in my perspective, like, because obviously I don't know shit, but
Is he
the
like
way
part of the curse now then? Or
I
the
think
house?
I think that that whole thing about his whole descent into madness was the Overlook like claiming Jack, if that makes sense. Like, because at
Yeah.
the end, obviously he becomes completely frozen in ice, and which real quick, that's obviously a meme that I've seen everywhere. I always thought that was Jim Carrey and not Jack Nicholson. Fun fact. But then
hilarious.
when I saw it, I was like, oh, okay. But anyway, I thought it was like, yeah, the Overlook was claiming Jack, and it leads into what Grady, right, was saying in the bathroom is that I've always been here, you've always been here. Like Jack's whole life was leading to him being taken by the Overlook. And it probably has something to do with the fact that why Danny is shining, why he has this shine. It probably has some sort of connection that Jack was always destined to be taken by the Overlook and to become part of the, like Odd said, the curse. And that haunting, because it is like the whole hotel itself is a haunting ground, or like maybe like some sort of metaphor for like the afterlife or some shit like that. But I think it was that's my take on it, and that he was always destined to be there. So it's like he just became part of the lore.
I guess to just finish up my thoughts is I'm definitely more of a fan of like modern movies with higher budgets and drones and all of that, whatever. Like I say, I'm a bit of a Marvel fan, right? So when it comes to sort of comparing it to other thriller movies that I've watched, which have been released more recently, I definitely prefer those. However, I think because what you said, John, right, was my list of favorite movies and my list of best movies, I would rate The Shining higher as a best movie, but obviously all of these other movies, which are more modern, as like my more favorite movies. So yeah, that's my thought on that. Okay, I guess.
I love the odds asked that question. I keep doing this thing like I'm in the Brady Bunch opening where I'm like.
So he's down to your left, I think.
Oh, this is weird. Okay.
So if you, it's
stream
like
on. There we go.
This way and then down this way. No, the other way.
That way.
Yeah, that way. Yeah, that's it.
Wait, hold on. Which way am I looking?
Yeah.
You got it out. But
there you go. Perfect.
But
oh my lord.
I love you asked the question about that picture, because I don't know that it's actually made explicitly clear either, and I like Corey's explanation. It's always been for me one of those things that I just kind of accepted as like this picture is a yearbook of the Overlook Hotel, and it happens to be a yearbook that all the people in that picture are there forever. It's very Italian talk with my hands thing. But I think that the sequel, there's some things just I avoid referencing the sequel, but obviously I'm not going to dive deep into any of them. But I think that the sequel may clear it up in terms of its treatment of that in the movie, because I've only read 3/4 of the book. I don't know that the book ends with the photograph thing, but when Mike Flanagan, who wrote and directed the sequel movie, adapted loosely from the novel, he went to Stephen King, they're friends, and he went to Stephen King and said, hey, I'm making a movie per the rights that you sold, and I would like your permission to make it a sequel to the Shining movie more than a sequel to the book, so that people that have mostly seen the movie, which is going to be more people than have read the book, can enjoy it in equal capacity. And so he took a lot of stuff from the book and then melded in a lot of stuff from the movie as well. So he kind of satisfies both audiences. And without spoiling anything, there may be a point in which you get the answer to that question, Odd. So watching the sequel, which again, like I said, I think you might like a lot more. I think that you may find an answer there.
With your recommendation, I think I probably will, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll probably watch it, because I haven't seen it either.
Yeah. We watch a lot of things for the first time together.
All right, Benny.
Quite cute.
Shut up.
All right.
Hit me with it.
Okay, when it comes to my list, I definitely say The Shining is, I definitely agree with both Odds, and I agree with John as well. When it comes to The Shining, I would say that it's not necessarily in my top 10 when it comes to like my favorite movies. Of course, I have a ton of movies that I could definitely say are my favorite movies. But when it comes to like the actual like the best movie, I definitely would have to put it up higher. I wouldn't necessarily say that I would put it within my top 5 necessarily. I'll say maybe around, well, I'll say top 7-ish. But I would say it's definitely within the top 10 regardless. But I just definitely love the fact that like it uses so many aspects for the movie. So like when it comes to like the score, when it comes to like their specific acting, when it comes to everything, I really just love the fact that they really can tie everything together and kind of make it into as good of a movie or as great of a movie as it is. When it comes to horror movies in general, That's tough because like I've seen a lot of horror movies and I love horror movies.
Mm.
For the horror aspect, I definitely wouldn't say that it would be in top 10. But if I were saying like the suspenseful thriller slash horror aspect, I would say it would probably be 10th, somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
because it's like
Because like
it's not scare. It's not like scary. It's
yes,
horrifying, if that makes
yes, exactly.
sense. Like the events that are happening are horrifying, but it's not like making me jump every single time. You know?
Exactly. No, yeah, because the first time I ever saw it, I maybe jumped twice or something like that, and that was because I was younger too. I was like, I don't even know
Yeah, and
how
one
old
of
I
my
was. I was like
jumps was Tuesday,
7.
so I mean, if that's telling you
Oh my
anything.
god. No, yeah, I get that. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it wasn't that type of movie that was just like too scary or
Yeah.
too. It was very suspenseful when I first saw it because I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be, it's gonna jump at me and do this random thing. But then there were little scenes like the bear scene that made no sense to me when I first saw it. I was like, huh? What is this? Okay, so that kind of ruined my like idea of that first. And then like the here's Johnny part, like all that stuff. Like when I first saw that, I remember I was like, okay, there's Johnny, I guess. I was a little kid about it, but yeah,
He has arrived.
I was like, okay. And then he just left, and I was like, okay, because like he left to go downstairs. I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
huh, okay, whatever, whatever. But no, yeah, in all actuality, I would say that regardless, it would still be within the top 10 for my best movies, and I would say it is like 10th when it comes to like horror slash thriller slash
Yeah.
suspenseful type movie.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
then it ends up becoming a little bit of an echo chamber here. I think we all pretty much agree in the same way that like it is such an incredibly well-made movie. And that's what I said at the beginning is that whether or not you like this movie, it is undeniably a well-made movie. And it's like it's everything from the cinematography to the score to the acting is just so incredible. But it's I think what happens to the fact that again what Odd said is not very modern, and I think that's something that we are more used to nowadays is the excitement and like the quick pacing of movies, whereas this is definitely a slow burn and it doesn't necessarily appeal to like our favorite type of thing, but everything about this movie is just so well done that you can't not admire it. And I think that's why it does fall onto that best movies list, but not necessarily your favorite. I think we can all agree on that. It is a very well-made movie, but it's not necessarily what we're all used to in the modern age of filmmaking and entertainment, where we're binge-watching things on Netflix and we're going, and getting force-feeding all this fast-paced content into our bellies and just enjoying all of this stuff that is being created so quickly. Whereas this is definitely more of an artful, slow burn, and it is amazing, and it's very impressive for what everything that it did. And I think it's very, very, very cool, very cool. We have been tasked to hydrate, so take your drink and take a sip.
It's like when they say right that like you can chat shit about it if you like, but then you just end up looking stupid. Right. Like you can try. It's like the documentary that you mentioned before, right? Just making really terrible points. Like like physically, verbally, you are able to do so.
For sure.
But then everyone just sort of looks at you and they think, like, did we watch the same thing, or are you just?
Yeah.
But yeah. No,
I feel you.
definitely,
I feel
agree.
you. Anyone else have any closing statements on The Shining specifically? Because I'm going to talk about a little bit of some other stuff after.
Watch it if you haven't watched it.
Yes.
And
And if you're still here and haven't watched it, what are you doing?
Everything has been spoiled for you now.
watch it in 4K if you have the option.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It looks much newer than the 40 years that it has been around.
Honestly.
And yeah, that's all. Just watch it in 4K if you can.
Yeah.
I know not
Yeah.
everybody's got the privilege, but if you can, do it.
And if you ever see what's up, guys? Little quick technical fix here. It looks like something happened with the Twitch VOD when I tried to download it and cut off at some point right before we finally finished recording the podcast today. But I'm gonna go ahead and add a little addendum in here. It cut off right when we were kind of wrapping things up. But quick announcement: next week we are gonna be reviewing Alien by Ridley Scott. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Please try to make sure that you've seen the movie beforehand. Obviously that just makes the conversation a little bit more engaging with a live audience. If you're catching this on YouTube later, make sure you put that comment down there. Throw me a follow, would mean the world to me. Sorry, a subscription, I think it's called on YouTube. I'm new, guys. It's okay. We're rolling with it. But I appreciate all your love and support. And again, make sure that next Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that is October 17th, as it is, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/SileyGames. Or catch it later on twitch.tv/SileyGames in the VODs collection, or catch it on YouTube, youtube.com/, you guessed it, SileyGames. Thanks for all the love and support, guys. I'll see you next time, all right?